Well, the Industrial Revolution begins almost 300 years of significant improvement in the wealth of our entire planet. And especially in my lifetime, literally billions of people have been lifted out of poverty because of the long-term effects of the technology and the changes in the economy. The bigger picture needs to be seen, and at the same time, we can't lose the human factor of dislocation and transformation. In fact, right now, we're in one of those economic and social moments of complete change in how people are going to go about work. The labor specialization of the Industrial Revolution leads to a significant increase long-term in what P.J. Hill has helped us understand as impersonal exchange. Now that sounds really dehumanizing because we all want to remember the farmer's market of the medieval fair, except in this case, we have more products available to more people at lower costs than ever before. The Wesleyan movement brought dignity, and I want to include other evangelical leaders along with him, but we're going to be focused on Wesley, brought dignity to the work that was repetitive and sometimes dehumanizing, and at the same time brought an identity greater than the job that someone would be fulfilling. The Industrial Revolution prompted increases in science and technology, accelerating medical advances, transportation, food preservation. If you've got a little time, ask me about H.J. Heinz, the ketchup king, and we'll tell you a little bit about the founding of the FDA and the amazing progress in healthier food for millions of people. Wesley was not a proto-Luddite. He was fascinated by science and also fascinated by what can happen when people grow in character and help to change the systems around them. We often forget the cultural explosion of the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries. You see, the economic engines of the Industrial Revolution give rise to universal education for all classes, both genders, and a variety of people that never had access before. The Sunday school movement is a direct product of responding to these children that had to work in factories, and on Sunday they could be taught literacy and scripture. We have the flourishing of museums, concert halls, theaters, other cultural expressions that are not confined to the aristocracy anymore, but have access for all classes to participate. This is an extension of the Renaissance in the Italian city-state, but a broad exploration of cultural change. The other thing arising out of the Industrial Revolution are the labor movements. Now, we're pretty familiar with the Marxist narratives beginning in the mid-19th century and continuing to this day of responding to the degradation with a variety of both revolutionary and evolutionary processes. But labor movements were not solely the preserve of secular Marxists. There were also Christians engaged in this, and by the late 19th century, by the 1890s, early 1900s, both Catholic and Protestant social thought was advancing in such a way that you find millions of Christians, both members of these unions, but also speaking about the conditions of the working classes. My colleague has mentioned the dislocation and suffering, and I think we cannot lose that factor when looking at this history honestly. But we also can't miss the entrepreneurial spirit that arises out of this tremendous change. And what happens is we not only have new businesses and new products, new systems that bring wealth to many more people, but we also have new missions and ministries arising, both to fulfill the Great Commission globally and to help people locally. I hope most of you have heard the phrase, cleanliness is next to godliness. You won't find that in the book of Proverbs, but you know what it really meant for the Wesleyans and their friends? That is, the poor needed clean housing, clean water, access to healthcare. In other words, it wasn't reducing godliness to hygiene. It was saying the human person needs a variety of conditions to flourish. And the evangelicals who joined with Wesley and others in the coming century cared deeply about that. We also have the birth of social enterprise. I always love to remind the younger generation of my students that social enterprise is not a late 20th century invention. that we have business owners, and hear this word carefully, voluntarily deciding that out of their Christian faith, how they treat their workers, how they engage in their processes really matter. We can think of thoughtful Christians like Cadbury. I hope you enjoy chocolate. Josiah Wedgwood and the china that he produced. We can think of the brewing company led by Arthur Guinness. And all of these leaders and others were controversial in their day because they went against the utilitarianism that characterized so much of the impersonal process that was growing. In fact, we can get really radical in another lecture someday and talk about the Owenites of the early 19th century. And Robert Owens was run out of town because he provided housing, education, higher wages. This was contrary to keep the wages low and the population low. And so Christian responses inspired by Wesley and other evangelicals are very important, and they inspire us today that there's a triple bottom line that we can aim for. We can actually care for the planet, make a profit and care for people, and move forward human flourishing with the economic engines that are there. You see, the challenge in looking at this history is twofold. To borrow a phrase from the French Annales School of History, we can look at the longue durée, the long duration, and make generalizations and see progress. The other side is to only see the degradation and dehumanization of these changes. And what we have to do is live with the tension, live with the paradox. We're in the middle of that right now, aren't we? As we see so many jobs changing. We're in as a significant change in the global economy today as the 18th and 19th century brought to the world. And we're watching that right now. But the Wesleyan movement found a fragile balance, advocating for better conditions, empowering personal change. I want to commend David Wright's book, How God Makes the World a Better Place. Changed people change the world. But Wesley and his followers didn't reduce it to personal conversion and change, but they also worked for systemic reform. So they believed in progress, but there were also going to be problems. Wesley anticipated providential increases in the reign of God until Jesus came, and had to live with the fact that humans were in rebellion and needed conversion and consecration to go forward. Wesley's eschatological vision of hope was not an escape, but a call to engagement. Evangelistic zeal wasn't separating conversion from living conditions, but was a call to encounter Christ and as a transformed person, make a difference as you gathered in small bands and held each other accountable, as you met in classes and began to learn how the gospel speaks to all of life, as you went to your meetings and got encouraged together. And the ethical expectations of Christ followers, and to borrow Jennifer's comment here, the expectation was that you would ethically earn all you could, save to leave a legacy, and give away all that you can that others might flourish. This vision, this eschatology, this evangelistic zeal, these ethical expectations are the vision of awakening and the common good that I think can continue to inspire us as we learn from this moment, for we're in a moment of great dislocation, and we can take heart that women and men that have come before us have faced these things and brought positive change. Thank you so much.